I'm happy to ask an expert, I see him already, in the field of alternative proteins. Yeah, it's you, Fabio. Don't look behind you. To take over the moderation now of the panel discussion that is now following. Fabio, you can already come if you want. You are partner at ZINTINUS, a venture capital fund with focus on alternative proteins, and spokesman for the board of BalPro, an association for alternative protein sources. Hi, Fabio. Nice to see you. Long time ago.
Last time.
And yeah, I think you will ask the panelists yourself, right? On the stage.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I would ask my speakers or my panelists to the stage. So Clément from REWE Group, Jonathan was already on stage, Alexandra from KWS, and Albert from the agricultural sector as well. It's been a warm welcome. Yeah, really great last year. We were talking a lot about the diversification in protein supply, and it's really great to have almost the whole supply chain here on stage, and also that we have different perspectives here on the stage. I'm very happy that Rentenbank created this platform where we really can discuss the topic on different angles, and this is really a great work that you have done over the past years. So thank you for giving us this opportunity, because Ivo also mentioned we need to communicate, we need to get into dialogue, because otherwise this whole transition will go nowhere without really working together. And so I would ask every one of you to please introduce himself and give his or her perspective on how you see a sustainable transition in the alternative protein space. And maybe we start with you, Albert, as you are representing also the farmers from Lower Saxony. And
yeah, thank you very much. My name is Albert Hortmann-Scholten. I work for the Chamber of Agriculture in Lower Saxony. And as you know, Lower Saxony is pretty much involved in meat and milk production. And I view from an economical point to this question you mentioned. And we have in Germany still a big industry, especially in Lower Saxony. We produce nearly 25% of milk and beef. We produce nearly 30% of the pork and piglet animal section. And even more, we are involved in the egg production. Egg production is rising up at the moment. We have 1/3 of the German egg production in Lower Saxony, and the biological, the organic egg production is also very big business. 50% of the organic eggs are produced in Lower Saxony. So in some districts we have nearly 30% of the economical worth which we produce depends on agriculture and food sector. That is in the moment. And I'm pretty happy that we come into contact. I also are involved in arable farming, and that is one of my questions. What can I say our farmers, arable farmers, what they shall produce in the future? I'm a kind of influencer. And I have to look wide forward into the future to tell them what is coming on. And so I'm pretty happy to be here.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. As the next one, Alexandra from KWS. Yeah.
Thank you, and great being here. From KWS. That's a breeding company for more than 170 years, or close to 170 years, 1 year missing. And normally what KWS does is breeding, for example, broadacre crops. We are very active in corn, we have wheat, we're market leader in smaller crops like rye, sugar beet is one of our main crops. But there are more. So overall we have more than 20 different crops that KWS is breeding. including also a lot of vegetables by now, and protein crops like peas. And there was a question, what can a breeding company like KWS do to also participate and contribute to this whole market of alternative proteins, plant-based in this case, especially. And when we looked at it, we thought, well, we can for sure, and we will continue doing that, breeding for the farmer. So the crops need to grow. Otherwise, we will never get a profitable product out of it. But you can do more. And I think everybody knows that an apple is not an apple and a tomato is not a tomato. You have different types of potatoes. And actually the same is possible for crops like peas, just that wasn't really looked at so deeply because it wasn't requested. So about 3 years ago, what we started is building this new pillar, this really new business area for KWS of going into food ingredients with our current model crop of peas. Doesn't mean that that's going to stay the only one we are going or working on. And my role there is that I took over, let's call it all the commercial aspects, including key accounts, so talking to people in the food industry interested in such newly developed proteins, but also including aspects like production. And nobody will be surprised when I say that includes seed and grain, but it also includes getting the protein that is used in alternative products out of the pea. And it's quite interesting where the challenges there are, especially in a market that's not huge yet. So how to bridge this gap from it works great in kilograms, maybe you can go to first tons on smaller areas, but how to bridge this gap to 1,000 of tons to produce. And that's why one of the questions that I'm thinking a lot about is how to grow this market for alternative proteins, because I think that is one of the key challenges that will also then, in the end, we are talking here about agriculture, be a key factor in bringing new opportunities also to farmers. Combine that with how to grow it profitable, but also how to bridge this gap between first starting and then really bringing it to an economy of scale together. So that's why I'm really happy of being here, because I think innovation and alliance leads then hopefully finally to this growth. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Alexandra. I think bridging the gap is one of the key phrases that we should use. And I see there are also a little gap between you and I don't have. The thing is that I was wondering if it was on purpose that we have there more the agricultural side and here more the other side. And in this context, I would ask you, Jonathan, where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself with MicroHarvest more in the primary series sector or in the processing part, or more related to, let's say, the later stage in the supply chain? Where would you see yourself there?
For me, it doesn't really matter where, because I look at the whole system quite integrated, and I do not think, well, let's do fermentation and we don't need plant-based. We need everything. Yeah. And I think the change is already happening now. And when we see, I mean, we have quite market insights. You also do have them. We see how many products are happening behind the scenes and what is in the shelves and what will come in the next couple of months and years into the supermarkets. And that's quite exciting. So I'm very positive about the transition which is happening already now. And I see it super integrated. So I think we need to grow more crops. The crops will have side streams. We need to, again, produce proteins from these side streams. And that needs to be seamlessly integrated and needs to be a win-win, obviously. And then this needs to go into the shops, and MicroHarvest is kind of the binding in between and is collaborating with everybody in the sector. And we are really sharing competition because it will be needed more than we can produce in a short amount of time. So it's in my perspective, really an ongoing change, and I see us right in the middle.
Yeah. No, that's and we share perspectives that we are not talking about an horizontal supply chain, but more about a network. But it was just asking if we are talking, for example, with farmers or with the agricultural sector, do they see it the same way, that we have more network, talking about circularity, for example, etc., and seeing a company like US as the enabler, as the piece in this network that helps everyone to maybe transition into a better and more ecological food system?
I mean, there's speaking of farmers, I think there's a lot of perspectives on the table, and it's quite diverse. And I think a lot is, should we do that or that? And please, like there's companies that say we don't need farmers because we do something fancy new. And I think that's fundamentally wrong. We will need farmers and we will need new technologies. And once you come across this integrated ideas, I think we are quite aligned. But of course, if others say, let's stop growing crops on the fields because we have fancy technology, I don't believe that's the right way. And if somebody is advocating this way, of course, that is then conflicting with the other markets. But in my perspective, it will also not work because we basically need everything that is possible.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Coming to our last panelist, Clément, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm at the lower end of the supply chain. We have the easy job, just making things accessible to the end consumer. My name is Clément. I'm head of food tech, heading the newly established food tech department. So 2 years ago, REWE approached me and told me about the idea of being a little bit more active in the startup ecosystem. We had a fair share of initiatives already, but we decided to be more active, so really scope for innovative solutions, especially new technologies that we can support, make it available to the end consumers by collaborating with and also strategically investing into startups. And this is exactly the idea. We see so many interesting, exciting technologies, and there's still a gap towards the consumer. And we want to help to establish and build the bridge and make those technologies available to the end consumer by making the resources we have, so not only distribution, but also the knowledge we have accessible to these technologies, to young entrepreneurs, and to help to gain market traction for those new technologies.
Okay. And how do you see the topic of bridging the gap from your perspective, as you have a lot of power and as you are also translating the customer or consumer need into the market and, of course, into the industry?
Yeah, look, so first of all, we don't want to discriminate the one or the other. So it's not about whether it should be just alternative proteins or animal-derived proteins. We think that we need the synergy of both. We need sustainable system that carries both on animal-derived products but also alternative-derived products. We also have a center of competency for agriculture, for the agriculture industry, to be in discussion with the farmers, to have also honest discussions with them, their needs, also their fears. But we also need to educate the consumer on why it is important to also invest into alternative proteins, because the food system as such, I mean, we have tremendous challenges we're facing. I don't want to name them. We're all aware, so climate challenges, but also limited natural resources. So we need to diversify on the proteins we have, and we think alternative proteins are one key pillar. But as I said, it's not neither or, it's both of them. And this is what we also want to evangelize. We just announced also our protein strategy. And there it's not to highlight alternative proteins, but to make it as equal for animal products, and also to educate the consumer about the needs for it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I mean, we're always talking about that a resilient food system is needed, that we need to have food safety in our supply chain. But still, for many people that are working in this new sector of food technologies, etc., the agricultural sector is still a black box. And maybe, Albert, can you give us a bit more insight what the perspective, especially from farmers, is to this new innovations, etc.? And as we have heard from Ivo, that there are many different ways how we can maybe connect, especially new solutions with the agriculture sector. Does it matches also your daily work, and how do you see it?
I think farmers are open-minded, and they always look for new economical opportunities. As you know, the economic situation in the German agriculture is not that good. When you look over the last 10 years, we lose each year 5% of the farms, especially in the animal sector. We are pretty low, have pretty low figures in the swine sector. We lost nearly 1/3 of our pig farmers in the last 7 years. And we always look for new opportunities. And I don't agree that is a black box, the agriculture. We have quite qualified young farmers. Most of our young farmers have studied agriculture in diverse sectors, and we are looking for economical opportunities. And I guess that's one of the reasons why we don't that much proteins what we need. I'm pretty happy with your presentation, Ivor. I liked it very much. You mentioned the critical points why farmers don't go into this business as we want to do that. And one main reason is the very low margin. If you grow peas or beans, you have pretty low margins, 300 euros. And if you grow potato, sugar beans, corn, we have 1,500, 1,800 euros per hectare. That's a real big gap between it.
Yeah. When I was talking about a black box, I mean more that some startups that want to work with the agricultural sector are missing or don't have an idea how to approach it. Yeah. Can they just go to a farmer? How do they identify those farmers who are very active and see also the potential, etc.? This is sometimes where I have the feeling that a platform or the right dialogue is needed. And also to you, Alexandra, how do you see the sector? Because you are in some kind of innovations dilemma, yeah? Because you need to, or you see the increasing demand in new protein solutions, yeah, by all the big mega trends, etc. But how do you scope with or handle it that you are working on such a topic? Do you have some kind of greenfield approach there? What is your idea around it?
So first of all, I would very much second what you just said. It's not that farmers don't know about those opportunities or are not interested in growing other crops. But in the end, they also want to make money. It's a business that they run. And crops like peas, beans, lupins are also not the easiest to grow. So they're also not really easy from an agronomic growth perspective. Combine that with the fact that there's not a really reliable market and it's not a lot paid for it. So I think that's the main gap why farming is not really picking it up. And I think that's, I'm repeating myself a bit from the beginning, that's the one thing, growing that market, making it wanted, is one of the things that we need to address. Combine that with, make it more profitable, and that's then where, for sure, also a company like KWS with breeding can help. But also a KWS only invests into a crop if then there is a market demanding it, so that also money flows back. So I'm always coming back to it's a market that first needs to demand it. And for that, we need consumers that want alternative proteins, be it plant-based or fermented or cultured. I also believe it's actually going to be a mix of it in the end. And that's where we now go into, as you said, it is in a greenfield approach of saying we are not only innovating for the farmers so that a pea or other smaller crops grow well so that it's also easier to handle them on the field, but making sure that those crops are great in products that the market can, so the market, not the farmer now, but the food industry can do something with it, that is wanted. So that's the approach we took in this new pillar. For me, also I'm KWS, the customer is not in the first place the farmer. Also the farmer is a critical piece, they are the ones in there growing it. But I need somebody making a product out of it, a cheese, an alternative milk, a burger, you name it, that says, yes, we want peas, because we make great products out of it, and we want those peas also because they now have the profile that we need. So we are taking a partnership approach here, because as KWS, we know how to breed, we know how to grow the plants. We have great scientists with tons of ideas how to make peas better for food. But is it really translating into a better and from a consumer also perceived steak, burger patty, or maybe a completely new product, maybe not something that's just a mimic of something? We don't know. So we are working with companies, smaller companies, larger companies, producing those things to then identify peas that hopefully, or not hopefully, that we test them to deliver that. And with that, the aim is not only to, have a relationship with that company, but also to grow the market, because I think that's a critical step to, in the end, also make it attractive for farmers and have more farmers seeing an opportunity in it, and then really also capturing value.
So on the one hand, you're saying that we have definitely a huge topic when it comes to the volume, because it has an impact on the price. But on the other hand, we are talking always about diversity. And when we are talking about plant-based solution, we see so many different sources there already. So this is some kind, this is also trickle to handle. I mean, we are talking about mycelium, then we are talking about soy, then we are talking about almond or cashew or whatever. There are so many solutions that we already see, especially in the dairy sector. How do you overcome this big challenge that there will be a lot of new solutions I mean, if we're talking at the fungi sector, I mean, there are so many different sorts out there. What is your perspective here? I mean, do we all need to agree on what specific source?
I definitely don't think so. And I really also believe there is space for fermentation. Plant-based is the first one to come. Maybe I think it's more a regulatory topic on the cultivated field. I think, Ivo, you will be able to correct me if the numbers are wrong, but it's 10% or 11% of the meat market that's plant or alternative-based, and about of the milk market, and 2% of the meat market. About that's the numbers I remember. I'm pretty sure you can correct me later on a bit. And so if we just go from 2 to 4%, that's a doubling. It would be 100% increase, and it's still not going to cannibalize a lot on the animal market. That for sure is going to stay. And I'm also not at all, also KWS, we're not expecting that the animal-based market is going to be gone in the near future.
Sure.
So I think there's room. So in conclusion, there's room to grow. That will also allow different forms of alternative proteins to come together. And there's also, why just soy or just pea? There's also synergies by bringing different proteins together that again can make better products, that again can help increase the market because it's wanted in itself. So before we start fighting for market share, let's come together, form alliances to build this market, would be a bit my approach. And in the end, if it's large, there will be also enough space for different solutions.
Yeah. And there's another problem. We have pretty much contact to the Rügenwalder Mühle, who is very experienced. And we talked to them and asked them, what crop shall we produce here in Lower Saxony? They worked with soybeans, and then they told us, okay, we tried out European soybeans, German soybeans, but we still buy the most soybeans in the United States because of quality. Quality. If we try to make more proteins, they must have the quality to go in processing. And I'm not quite sure if we are able at the moment, we German farmers are able in the moment to fulfill this quality.
And maybe if I may add, because you made a good point, I think at the end it's about the consumer. So he will decide whether a product is good or not. I believe at the end he doesn't care too much whether it's mycelium-based, it's soy-based, pea-based, whatever. If the product is good and it's convincing, it will be established on the market. But I think, and I see it oftentimes, especially in the food tech industry, we're more talking about the tech perspective, about also maybe the equity story, how to raise money with exciting technology.
but we're losing a bit the customer perspective. So we should be more focused and really have discussions about customer centricity. What can you do with the technology? Is it really superior product in terms of taste, texture, but also a nutritional profile? And if it's also economically viable at the end, if none of this is given, and this is the big hurdle, the big obstacle we see in the food tech industry, we need to address all of those 4 pillars. It does not help to crack the nut just in terms of maybe pricing. So if the quality of the product is not right, and I mean, we're having lengthy discussions about also price parity. I see, yes, we need price parity in order to shift it and to push it a little bit more towards mainstream, because consumers need to afford the products. But if the quality is not right, you will see what we saw maybe also in the years before. We have a high interest and people now can afford products, but the quality was not convincing. So we have not had too much repurchasing rates, because the customer penalized, well, I can afford it, but the product is not as good as the animal-derived product. And here we're always benching, it's a bit unfair, against the best steak, for instance, I had in my life. And if the product itself, the quality is not comparable to this, even if it's cheaper, the customers won't buy it in the long term.
Yeah. When you talk about customer centricity in the production, or let's say the development phase, how do you see the whole topic of customer orientation and your role as a retailer there? Is it not also your role to educate more about the new solutions and the new products that we have in the market, about the different sources and about the different ingredients?
Yes and no. I mean, we also have limited opportunities. I mean, it's not like we can put someone who evangelizes the people on the shelf. So having someone just educating them and then telling them about the background information of the products. Also, there's a limited span of attention of the consumer, so it's really, really tough to educate them on shelf, for instance. And I mean, by also formulating a protein strategy, we do want to emphasize a little bit more. We do want to communicate a little bit more about the benefits of alternative proteins, but also about the balance of the diversification of protein sources. But I think it's also up to the brands, to the industry, to put a little bit more marketing budget into educating the consumer. And I think we also talked about it last year at the Smart Protein Summit. We're not bold enough as an industry as such. We are not really communicating. We are not seeing marketing budgets being spent on educating the end consumer about the benefits of alternative proteins. I still see even Rügenwalder Mühle, I think they're not spending large amounts of marketing budget to educate the consumer. So I see there's still a lack, maybe also partly on our side, but also on the whole industry should be a little bit more bold and spending also resources on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we saw it also at Ivo's charts that diets are always also ideological, or have ideological parts, and are part of the politics at the moment. And I see a big challenges with having all the misinformation in the market about the upcoming ultra-processed discussion, that we need to give more transparency in the whole process, in the whole supply chain of alternative proteins. And here, my next question goes to you, Jonathan. How do you view this upcoming discussion that is more and more going against alternative proteins when it comes to the processing part?
Yeah, I mean, I could touch on many points. For me, it's really the integration aspect. So with MicroHarvest, we kind of tackle this because we have an ingredient which tastes good and which is having a nutritional value. If you, of course, have an ingredients which has anti-nutritional factor, then you need to treat it, then you make an isolate out of it, and then it's still not really properly tasting, then you add 60 ingredients to make something that is then somehow looking like meat and smelling like meat, but not really tasting on par, then of course this is not accepted. But that is why we do what we do, because we can deliver superior taste. And that is exactly what you said. You said, I think plant-based first. No, if you want to have price parity, a pea has 20% proteins and 60% starch. If you go plant-based first, what are you doing with the starch? The only reason we use pea is because pea was grown to grow starch, and protein was available because it was a side stream. So we turn it upside down, but then we need to take care of the side stream, and we need to do everything at the same time and think integrated. So, and once we think integrated, then of course, adding a MicroHarvest protein might give the opportunity to also have a crop which is not fully optimized in yield, which is not fully optimized in taste, because then you bring, a second protein in, which can bring the taste, which can bring also the nutritional value. And I mean, pea is not harmful, but it's also not easy to process. So then I think let's tackle it integrated. But it's a challenge because it's a lot this first and me, I'm better, and so I don't see all these problems, but I think we just speak about what's better. And also when I need to speak to investor, the only question is why is it better, and what are the mistakes of others? But we need it all.
Yeah, quickly, because I think there was a misunderstanding. I said pea. Well, first of all, for sure, I want pea first because I want pea. That's for sure. But when I said peas first or plant-based first, is because that is just the most advanced, or was the most advanced. I think fermentation really picked up because it was there and was already easy to use because you had it available, you had the extracts available, you could mix it with starch and fibers and so on. So that's why it came first, then followed by fermentation, was now picking up. And from a time perspective of when is it really ripe for the market, I think cultivate is the most first out. Otherwise, I'm a little bit repeating myself here, but I really see place for all those technologies, and especially also the synergies out of them. Why do we want to make pure plant-based and not, and actually at the IFA, I was there yesterday, I think at least 3 hybrid products that I tasted of animal with plant-based. So also really that would help if we replace 30, 40, 50% by mycelia-based, by fermentation-based, by plant-based, will help reducing the CO2 footprint. Oh. And you still have maybe all the nice properties that are coming with the special ways of or how meat looks like or is made, or even by cheeses. So I don't think there is one solution fitting all. And I also don't think that pure product is what's going to be the winner in the end. But bringing things together that maybe are not intuitively, immediately like animal with vegetarian or vegan proteins, because let's be clear, the majority of the people are flexitarian, yes, or even carnivores. Some are just eating meat, but I think they might be able to convince them. We don't need to get all vegan and vegetarian from my perspective. And if we can get more plant-based, fermentation-based into products, even also or including hybrids, that also will help grow the market. And with that, offer opportunities for farmers growing crops and helping new industries growing, because also then mycelia-based, fermentation-based is more and more wanted. So I think we need to follow up all those roads and stop thinking in boxes, this is this, but really find the synergies.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us to the next problem, which is the policy landscape, because then if you have mixed products, I mean, the impact, if you look at your met halb and halb at the discounter and you would change 10 or 20%, it would have such a bigger impact than doubling any plant-based markets. So that is the direction we also need to think. That how would you label it? So on the label, it would be then some mixture of things, and the customer would be somehow misleaded because he wants the same experience he had before, and I think it's not a challenge to get the same experience. So I think then the policy landscape needs to also understand that this is a train which is going and needs to enable this train.
No, that's very funny that you mentioned the IFA. I mean, for those who haven't been there, that's the world's leading food processing trade show that's now was over the past 4 days here in Frankfurt. And I also saw that hybrid is a huge topic there. And for me, I mean, it's not the first time that we see hybrid solutions in the market. I think in the Netherlands, we see already several solutions there. But it's not only the question how you would label it. I think the big question is about customer acceptance. Would you really accept a product, where you take the same meat, but just fill it up with plant-based ingredients? And here, of course, your opinion would be very interesting. How is your perspective on hybrid products?
Well, you said one thing, right? It's about customer acceptance, and you have to find a good timing of introducing those products. I think it was before my time. We did a test. We had hybrid products on the market, but customer acceptance was not there. So the performance was quite poor, and therefore, I mean, it was a proof point for all the naysayers to say, look, it doesn't work. And now I have to convince those naysayers to reintroduce it. I think we have a window of opportunity of introducing them. I mean, obviously, we as a food tech department are looking into hybrid products, but you clearly need to understand how to position it on the market. Look, we have dedicated shelf space for vegan, vegetarian alternatives. Here the question is, should we put it there? Clearly it isn't vegan or vegetarian because you have animal parts in it. Do you put it in the same shelf space as conventional meat? Will there be consumers who are maybe neglected or don't like it? How to label it? I think this is also a topic of itself. Should it be meat infused with plant? And also raising awareness that you don't take the value-giving ingredient and replacing it with something in lower value, because this is also in terms of customer acceptance and awareness. They think, okay, now retailers, they just try to save money, or the industry is trying to save money by integrating something that is maybe perceived as cheaper, even if it isn't. So there are a lot of topics we are also discussing internally. But as you mentioned, we see it in the Netherlands. I think there's a higher rate of acceptance for hybrids. We are closely surveying this, and I think there will be opportunity, but the timing here is also crucial.
When we see the beef market, we have a price explosion. At the moment, beef is nearly €7 a kilogram per heifer or per bull, and maybe if you go into the sausage market or in the patty market and do this, try at the moment now, maybe it could work because beef is pretty expensive for all us consumers, and we want to have new products maybe that are cheaper, a little bit cheaper. That's my opinion.
I think this can be a good opportunity to build stronger bridges, of course, and also gives them perspective for farmers to work on. But in general, I mean, as Ivo mentioned, that in Germany, it's the whole discussion also between the different sectors and the whole supply chain is going much more peacefully than we have, for example, in Austria or in France. And this is what I like here. And to come to also almost a conclusion, what I like that about the German alternative protein or the protein landscape as such is that we have already bridges. We have already good humors, a good platform where we can have a good and constructive dialogue. And to come also to one of my last questions to all of you, what would you see is needed that we really can create a good and say expanding alternative protein hub, especially in Germany? How can we foster this dialogue that we have already established here within Rentenbank or within this kind of format to really bring the whole sector to the next level? That would be very interesting to hear from every one of you. Of course, what are your concrete next steps there?
I would say everything that Ivo said. No, I mean, look, also I'm talking about regulatory frameworks, and we've experienced it now also with Infinite Roots not being granted access for their mycelium to the market. I mean, we're creative enough to find ways through and established products built on the mushroom itself, which are not regulated. But
We see so many regulatory hurdles also for fermentation, especially, I mean, Ivo also mentioned that it costs $1 million just to go through that process. It takes an indefined amount of time. So you mentioned 5 years, hopefully, we will not take that long. But we see so many really exciting technologies. We are also participating. So we invested in infinite roots, informal, so biomass fermentation, precision fermentation. And we would love to bring our products and make it accessible to the end consumer. But there's so many regulatory hurdles and the whole process is so intransparent. And I mean, looking in other countries or at other countries like Spain, so having sandboxes that you are actually also allowed to test those ingredients, to have consumer testings, talking about customer centricity, to make sure you get the feedback of the consumer, that you don't develop something in the dark that you don't know will it be accepted by the end consumer, but being or taking that as an integral part in the process. And also in Germany being a bit more bold, because we have a striving food tech ecosystem. We have really genius entrepreneurs here that want to drive this whole industry forward. We need to allow them, even if it's just a sandbox, but to get in touch with the end consumer, to make them also aware of what's on the horizon, but also to take their perspective into the formulation of end products.
Okay. To summarize your points, we need a better regulatory framework.
Yes.
We need sandboxes that allows us to try and to test products. And the third one is more guidance when it comes to the regulatory approval process. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe to the framework, I would add faster also, not just better, but also faster. It's good that we have a lot of regulatory, but if it would be faster and a little bit more guidance, then we would already make a big step. I would add, I mean, whenever I'm on the stage where Ivo is not talking before we are or BCG, I'm starting at scratch. And there's another BCG study saying that the euro invested into alternative proteins is having the biggest sustainability impact. And if we speak about climate change, we speak about energy. Why is that? Why is there no awareness? And I really don't get it. And I strongly believe that in 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, looking at what's happening this week, but that in the near future, we will have an understanding that this is an opportunity for Europe. We are deep tech Europe. In the US, nothing will happen for 4 years now. We have the chance to get things moving now. And that is for me, if we understand this, and I believe in this room, there is a very good understanding that if you go to Berlin, there is some people, if you are very selective, that have a grasp, it's just not understood. And on European level, there is some people that do understand it, but it's just not understood. And that is our European opportunity now. And let's grow and let's tackle this market and let's become independent in this market.
Yeah. Jonathan, that is really honey to my ears, because I think with this diverse food landscape that we have in Europe, we have really a huge advantage. This is absolutely without a doubt, and I think there's also the huge economical opportunity for the future. So thank you very much for this perspective here, and as an addition to the point Clément says, so food in Europe should be our future and also part of the climate change transition. Alexandra.
I would take a bit the focus away from politics and regulatory, important as it is, but leading it back to the point of we need to think it from the end, and that's the end consumer, all of us and our fellows on this earth eating those products. So making sure we deliver to those needs, and that's all those 4 points that you mentioned that need to be considered. And doing that also a bit together, so bringing not only politics and regulatory on the right pathway, but also bringing the industry together to then together marketing, advocating the positives of plant-based, fermentation-based alternatives, but also making sure we're working on the right attributes, helping then also startups, smaller companies of not deviating into things that are actually, now when you're deeper in the market, you already know that's not going to drive it. It will always be in niche, so it's not going to grow. So industry associations, what we also do in BalPro, I think it's a good example, bringing from breeding, so the very beginning to then REWE and so on together define what is it that's needed to convince the end consumer, and then talking about how can we also together communicate that.
True.
Coming back to my very first beginning, let's grow the market first before we start fighting about the market share, because it's big enough then it makes sense. At the moment, it's also about, well, we first of all have to grow it. And I believe politics can help, but in the end, it's about having the right products for the consumer. And there we all should work together.
Great. So this is the point, joint vision, right?
Joint vision from the industry from the start to the end. And then politics can help.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much.
I can only add 2 words. We have to do more education and information, especially on the farming side. And then economics will make the rule.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you very much. I think we had 1 hour and it's just on point. So thank you very much for having you and for giving us all this very important insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.